Hello, this is Michael Novinson with ISMG. We're going to be discussing how the private sector embraces spy agency style intelligence. To explore this, I'm joined by Mishaal. He is the co-founder of Decisive Resources. Mishaal, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for coming into the ISMG studio at Black Hat. Wanted to get a sense from you off the top here of when you look at the private sector, what are you seeing from companies in terms of both collecting and analyzing data to produce actionable intelligence?
Well, I believe the private sector has a lot of data already sitting with them. Data like telemetry data, logs, and access data. They weren't really using it for much in the past, but nowadays they're selling it as a feed or, as a subscription model to all the other companies so that they can then put intelligence into it. They can use it for other purposes to kind of connect the dots with all the other stuff that's happening in the intelligence world.
Got you. And in terms of this information, I guess two questions. First, what historically made it legally questionable? And then second, what are we seeing nowadays in terms of it being packaged into commercialized intelligence products?
I think privacy made it questionable. If somebody told you they were selling your data, like your home address or your phone number or your call logs to someone that's private, and most of these things are private, then it would, cause a lot of questions in the industry. But the way they package is very different. They bundle up data into so many different, layers and sell it as logs or security or threat intelligence feeds. But private investigators and intelligence agencies do use it to track down criminals. But again, it's all done under the radar in the name of something else, not just your personal data, not PII, but, in threat intelligence feeds.
So for organizations that previously avoided a data that perhaps came from data breaches, what caused them to realize that it might have value nowadays?
I think it has a lot to do with the hacker community, because hackers have been using hacked and breached data for mischievous purposes. Like if somebody got your password, they would try to do password resets or your IP address and then kind of figure out where you are. But then the defense sector said we could use the same data for protecting people, to have a proactive approach to, if your passwords are already breached, then maybe you're more likely to be breached again if you haven't changed your passwords. Or I personally use it for everything other than passwords. So let's say you had a breach with an IP address or a home address, or you stayed in a large Vegas hotel and you put in all the information at sign up, which is your home address, your mobile phone number, your personal email address. All that will be in a breach eventually. And if I'm looking up that data and I don't know enough about you, I can always look at breach data to see what other things did you put in various breaches that are out there. It's not maybe a password, but it's everything else about you that's now also public that intelligence companies will see. Hackers will also use and abuse that data, but the good guys are going to use it to maybe track down, the bad guys or mischievous behavior.
Got you. Wanted to focus in particular on info stealer logs. You get a sense of how have you seen these used out in the field to both identify cyber criminals and scammers much faster?
Yeah, I think Stealer logs are a game changer, because Stealer logs not only have like breached data in them, but they have computer related data. So it's basically a malware that's installed in someone's computer, usually the hacker's computer, because they're downloading all this various stuff from the internet. And then that malware will get everything from the browser and like the browser history, the computer logs and stuff. So you'll end up seeing that bad actor, their browsing history, their login credentials of anything they put in the browser, their computer make, model, their IP addresses, their folder structure, and a lot of the time screenshots of what their desktop looks like. All that is extremely valuable information if we're trying to find a bad guy. And all we had was like a hacker handle or an email address, like one or two, I call it seed pieces of information. From there, you can kind of pivot out with Stealer logs. So for me, Stealer logs are extremely valuable to track down criminals who intentionally try to be anonymous.
Gotcha. And how easy or difficult are they to obtain nowadays?
Not too difficult. The sources of these are widely available. Everyone knows where to find them. It's just a lot of data. So it's hard to collect and put it in a database and hunt through it, because it's it's just too much data. So to kind of collect it, it's not for everyone. So that you have these certain companies, larger groups that are collecting this data and then providing it as a subscription feed to everyone else to kind of sift through it. So it's not easy, I would say. It's not easy to maintain it, but it's easy to find it.
So, I mean, what are some of the challenges around maintenance, and then how do organizations approach that sifting process to separate the wheat from the chaff?
Yeah, the main issue is the amount of data is so much, like in terms of, cookies, like browser cookies are in there. So those cookies can be replayed to kind of replay a login. So like, do you store it? Do you not? Is it useful to you? It's larger chunks of data. Do you store the screenshots? They take space. There are files in these stealer logs sometimes, like docx files, PDF files. A lot of people just throw them away. They're like, we're not after this. We're after more of the browser information. So it's more about picking and choosing what data to keep, what data to not keep in your own database, and then what are the things you want to be searchable, like to index it. So all these decisions either, make your database much larger than it should be, and then storage issues, then collection issues, like how much should we collect? There's so many sources. The other issue I think we get is repetition of data. You get it from 5 different sources. It may be the same data, but packaged in a different way. So then you get so much repeat that from an investigator's perspective, you're like hunting through the same, users' data, but different data sets, and it just wastes a lot of time. So whoever's doing the collection needs to do a really good job at indexing it right.
Got you. Want to focus also is on ad tech data, get a sense of what you're seeing in terms of companies commercializing ad tech data to reconstruct an individual's activities.
Yeah. Ad tech data is the most controversial data in my opinion. It's basically all of your apps that are collecting your GPS coordinates, your network coordinates, the Wi-Fi you connect to, and then sending it out to some central company that then sells that data to whoever wants to buy it. So ad tech data is stronger than any GPS data, any cell tower intercept that law enforcement does, because your phone doesn't need to connect to a cell tower anymore. Just needs to connect to Wi-Fi, and that app you've downloaded is kind of snooping on you, telling someone else your exact coordinates and where you are. But that data is accessible now. That is accessible to the private sector. And with ad tech data, you can not only pinpoint the current location of you. Let's say if I had your ad tech data with me, I could tell where you are, even if your phone was not connected to any cell tower. But also I could tell historical locations where you have been in the past, 30, 60 days. So a trail, a pattern of life I can tell, which is very dangerous. And then I can also see who you meet often, like your ad tech data combined with someone else's ad tech data. And I can see, was there an overlap? Did you meet this guy or not? So oftentimes, the question for me is, did this criminal meet this guy? Is he paying him or whatever? You can tell by overlapping 2 different sets of data and saying, yeah, they met at a coffee shop at exactly this place. And then they met again at this person's house, because that's what the ad tech data shows you. So it's pretty revealing.
And then once investigators have that information to multiple individuals in the same place at the same time, what are they able to do from there?
So it's correlation, essentially. It's not proof of crime or anything, but it gives them a lead to say, all right, since these people meet so often, there must be something going on. What that does, it gives the investigator and or law enforcement a lead to say, let's do surveillance on them now. It justifies doing either surveillance, or it justifies putting more resources and saying, our hunch was right. That other hunch we had was in the wrong direction, but this is where we should either focus more energy on, more resources, more money, more whatever, or a law enforcement intercept. It just gives us a very solid direction. Again, it doesn't prove wrongdoing. It just gives us more focus.
I know you had said earlier in our conversation that this data often has operated in a gray area of sorts from either a privacy standpoint or from a regulatory standpoint. Has there been any clarity from authorities either in the United States or elsewhere as to the legality of obtaining or using the data like this?
Well, depending on where you are in the world, the laws will change. So I usually never discuss specific laws, because in fact, state to state, laws will change about what data you can keep, what data you can view. depending on who you are, the law will change. So let's say you're law enforcement, you probably cannot use a lot of the stolen data, which is breach data or stealer logs, as we talked about. They can't use it, but I, as a private investigator, can to, come up with a certain conclusion. But that same data will be thrown out in a court case. So we have to be careful. All right, stolen data can't be used in a court case, but it can be used in a private case to solve something else. Same thing with all the cameras that are, watching you, the AI-based cameras that are looking at your plates. They're banned in some places, but totally allowed in other places. Ad tech data, same thing. You often see in the news that some ISP was caught selling certain data about people, and then once they're caught, then it gets banned. But all the other things that are currently happening, as long as they're not caught or it doesn't show up in bad light, so to speak, it's allowed. So that's why I say it's a pretty gray area.
Finally here, wanted to get a sense of how can enterprises integrate this intelligence, this type of data into their existing security platforms?
Yeah, so there are quite a few cybersecurity intelligence companies that are integrating breached data as feeds. So they'll take it from other companies that are really good at collecting all the info, stealer logs, the breach data, even ad tech data, and then combining it with everything they currently have from a threat intelligence perspective. So they'll already have logs, feeds about, criminals, about all the other hacking groups out there. So they'll take all the data they currently have, which is mostly technical cybersecurity based data, and then they'll take location data from others, or human intelligence data, or open source intelligence data about social media and whatnot from other feeds. So all of these things then combine under one dashboard, and then that creates intelligence. And that is kind of the definition of intelligence, taking various data feeds and then putting some meaning around it. And they're currently doing this, and there's a lot more room to improve upon the intelligence piece of the data.
It's a brave new world. Mishaal, thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We've been speaking with Mishaal Khan, co-founder at Decisive Resources. For ISMG, this is Michael Novenson.